Flutist Philipp Jundt from Switzerland did a rearrangement of pieces by Johannes Brahms and made them into pieces for the flute. He rearranged classic repertoires into flute pieces and will continuously mature musically.
Flute is the most beautiful instrument, and it's also a tool to show my emotion or the story and the emotion of the composer. So this feels really like home. For me, flute is like home.
He considers Korea's as his second hometown, and we can see his activities as a teacher and a music director for a festival. Let's learn about flutist Philipp Jundt's warm musical tones, which will engulf everyone during the end of the year on this edition of the Innerview.
Hello everyone, we opened the doors with the Innerview with an amazing performance. We're wrapping up the year 2016 and I am looking forward to my interview with the flutist Philipp Jundt. Hello Philipp.
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here and talk to you.
So you are born in Switzerland, but you've been living in Korea for a number of years now. So what have you been up to?
Yes, I came to Korea 9 years ago, and I spent about half of the time in Korea, half of the time in Germany. And I'm very happy to be here and teach and play here. And I'm going to play in the concert across the street from here in Seoul Art Center. So I'm very happy to be here.
But we cannot leave out Brahms when we talk about our activities this year. So you really fell in love with Brahms. So could you tell us about your concert and new album?
Yes, I had the chance of recording this year a full album with Brahms songs. Brahms, who actually never wrote anything for the flute, wrote wonderful songs for voice and piano, and I transcribed them for flute and piano. And I recorded them with my very good friend Freddie Kemp, who is a wonderful pianist. And also we got the chance of premiering this CD also across the street from here at the Seoul Art Center
Right.
a month ago.
Right. So your the title of the CD is also very beautiful. It's a Guardian Angel. So could you explain more about your CD?
Yes, during my research on the Brahms songs, I found this small collection of songs he wrote for children. So it's a children folks collection. And one of these songs is just a one-page song, and it's called The Guardian Angel.
Oh, that's the title of the song
It's the
that
title of the
Brahms
song.
wrote.
Yes.
Okay.
And it sounds a little bit like almost like church music. And for me, it's one of the most beautiful melodies
Oh, really?
I've ever heard. And so I wanted this piece to be the title of my new CD. And most of the other pieces have to do a little bit something with love or with death or with loneliness. So the whole CD, I think, is a very deep, sad, but very beautiful CD. So it's perfect before Christmas.
Perfect before Christmas. Okay. Yeah. Well, as you said that Brahms has never written a piece for flute, but when you decided to arrange the piece to suit flute, there must have been something about Brahms that led you to do that. And what was that?
Yes, at the time of Brahms, the flutes were not up to the same level like they are today. So many composers felt that the flute doesn't have the sound and the capacity to write this beautiful, or to play this beautiful music. But today the flutes are much better in quality and in sound. And so I think that if Brahms would have known the flute from today, I'm pretty sure he would have written more for the flute. Brahms actually wrote wonderful orchestra solos for the flute in the Fourth Symphony or in other symphonies, but he never wrote a solo piece. But flutists play a lot the Schubert songs these days, but no one ever played the Brahms songs, and I actually prefer the songs from Brahms over the ones from Schubert, and that's why I transcribed the songs for flute.
So what did you find out in the process of transcribing?
I think for me the difference of the Brahms songs, if we compare for example with Schubert, is that the music is really a little bit independent of the text of the songs. So for example, Schubert songs, they tell a story, isn't this happened? The Brahms songs, the music describes more a feeling or a atmosphere, and so that's why I think it's beautiful music to be played with an instrument rather than by songs. And the other thing is that I feel that for me Brahms suffered a lot. He had a hard life. He was in love and he didn't get the love back. But his music is quite the opposite. It's extremely meditating, and it's just absolutely beautiful, and it's at the moment. And when I play Brahms, I always feel like coming down.
And you did a world premiere performance with your longtime friend and pianist, Freddie Kemp. So how was the chemistry between you two on and off stage?
Freddie is a long-year friend, so I think it's much easier to play together with a friend because many things you just don't have to talk about. So when we rehearsed, we just play and we don't need to discuss things, which is very comfortable. And on stage, it's the same thing, so we can spontaneously react more. If you know each other, it's a better connection, I think. And one other thing is that Freddie, he played a lot of Brahms repertoire, of course, in his life. And as a flute player, I only played the orchestra music from Brahms. And for me, it was very interesting to play with someone who has such a big experience about really Brahms.
Right.
Because, of course, our flute repertoire from the Romantic period is not so large. And so I think Brahms, it's a very interesting thing about Brahms, he collected all his life poems. So he was very much into the poetry.
Oh, really?
And he had a little diary where he collected all the poetry. And some of these songs, of these poems, he actually turned into songs. So he took the poems and he wrote the music. And he did that over a very long period of time. Unlike other composers who wrote a lot in 1 year or 2 years, Brahms really wrote over his whole life, and he gave a lot of time. He even compared writing music to have a seed, like a flower seed or a seed, and giving the seed water, and it grows over time. And I think in his music you can always feel that. You can always feel that his music grows over a very long period of time, and it's very natural and beautiful music.
Yeah. Well, besides Brahms, is there any music you'd like to express with flute?
I have actually two very interesting projects coming now. I'm also going to do the 2 CDs about these projects. One of them is the Paganini Caprice. I transcribed the 24 violin caprice for flute and improvising piano. So a pianist is going to play together with me, but improvising. But I'm not improvising, I'm just playing basically the 24 caprice. And my second project is, actually the idea came here in Seoul. I went with a friend to the Noryeonjin to the fish market here in Yeouido, and I talked to him that I really love Telemann fantasies, and that I would like to have a composer writing 12 comments or fantasies on the Telemann fantasies. And half a year later, this friend, Oliver Schnieder, a fantastic pianist from Switzerland, he called me and he said, I found a composer, come to my festival, he is going to write the piece for you. And so beginning of this year, the piece was ready, and I premiered it in Switzerland. So David Philipp Jundt is a composer from Switzerland, and he wrote 12 fantasies on the Telemann fantasies. And that's another CD project I'm going to do next year, so to record all the 12 Telemann fantasies and the 12 Hefti fantasies.
So you are known as a flutist with warm music tones. Are you a warm person as your music?
That's a difficult question, but I think that the warmness of a person has a little bit to do with the openness maybe of a person. And that has to do maybe also with life experience. And I think I personally consider I have a lot of life experience. I traveled a lot since I'm a little boy. I was alone in many different countries. I have many experience. And so I think that makes me probably a warm person, but it's quite sounds quite arrogant to say about oneself. But you ask this question because of the tone.
Right.
So I think as a flute player, the tone is one of our biggest issues, or sometimes it's a complex, sometimes it's a goal, but it's something like the human voice, which is our identity basically.
Right.
And really as a flutist, every day of the life we try to find the best tone, and it has to do with body work, with imagination, with the instrument. It's a very beautiful task.
So let us continue our story of life and music after this short video clip.
Philipp Jundt has been playing the flute for 27 years. He performs in Switzerland and Germany, as well as in all corners of the world, and is recognized as a talented, sensual musician for his heart-warming performances. Back in October, he held a dual concert with pianist Freddie Kemp, who is his close friend. Johannes Brahms did not write pieces for a flute, but this performance garnered a lot of attention, as it gave a reinterpretation of Brahms' pieces to the world. It's the day of the year-end music recital to wrap 2016 on a good note. Prior to the actual performance, everyone was busy with rehearsal. Many have high expectations for the perfect harmony created by a clarinet, a piano and a flute.
풀 피아노 소리 아주 잘 들려요. 상대적으로 조금 작아요.
He truly inspired me to make more beautiful music, and he's such a wonderful player. I'm sure it will go very well.
It's really like on stage having a conversation with someone, which is a really fantastic thing, by the tool or the language of music.
We are curious about what kind of musical inspirations and new challenges Philipp Jundt will face in 2017. The year-end recital makes everyone speechless with his flawless harmony.
So tell us about your childhood. Was it your dream to become a musician?
I had a very wonderful childhood, I have to say. I was very lucky. I have fantastic parents who always supported me since very young to just do what I love, no matter what it is. So as a kid, I did many things. I played the violin, I played the flute, I played tennis. So whatever I wanted to do, I could do. And I think that was a big privilege. And also music was always a big part of our lives at home. I went to concerts since I'm a 5-year-old boy, listening to fantastic violin players like Isaac Stern or people like this. And when I was maybe 12 years old, I started playing the violin with 7. And when I was 12, I started playing the flute. And very quickly I won a very big competition in Switzerland. And after this competition, I really received many, many concerts with orchestras. So I think when I was a 14-year-old boy, I played solo with Tonhalle Orchestra and with many chamber orchestras. And that just made me have to practice. I didn't really choose to practice so much, but I just had to practice a lot of flute, even though my love was really with the violin. And but after a while, because I played every week, really many, many concerts with flute, of course, I really loved the flute also, and it was not really a question after a while that I would not go on with violin and play
So you had much talent in flute then?
I guess so. Perhaps it was also just the possibility or the opportunity I had to play the many concerts. In Switzerland, many of the big companies support young people. So I got a lot of support from banks and insurances to promote me as an artist. So they basically pay orchestras or they give some money to orchestras to play with young people. And that's a fantastic chance, which I have never seen in any other country I've been to. But I also had other interests. I wanted to become a gardener first. We live in a big house in Switzerland with a big garden. So I always used to like gardening. I also used to like doing the economic things, and so I was never really sure whether I would really like to become a flute player. Both my brothers become scientists, even though they are also musically interested, but I ended up with a flute.
So I'm sure you studied under an excellent teachers. So what was the best advice the teacher has given to you?
I had fantastic teachers, I have to say, and it's difficult to single out only one of them because in different times of your lives, another teacher can give you something good which you need at this time of your life.
Right.
But if I would single out one thing which I would like my students to understand, or which I also received from my teachers but also from my parents, is to really follow your heart and do what you really are sure what you want to do and what you have to do, what you love, rather than trying to fulfill what you think is best. And this you can apply to music and to life. Even if I talk about musical interpretation, I don't think it's too good to just try to find out what does a jury want to know or what do want to hear or what do people want to hear. But I have to find my way of playing and what I really like. And that is something which I think too many students don't understand, and too many teachers don't teach their students. Especially also here in Asia, I mean in Korea since a long time. And I think here it's even more extreme that the students try to fulfill what teacher tell them, and teacher tell the students how they think Bach should be played, rather than waking up
following their own hearts, right?
Or waking up the interest. I think one of the most important things is really being interested in music, being interested in the composer, being interested in playing, rather than trying to be successful or trying to fulfill what you think other people expect from you. So I think my best advice is that you really should listen to your heart and do what you really love, rather than trying to fulfill something.
So you left Switzerland at the age of 17 and you played in various countries in Asia and North America and Europe. And which period of your life do you think affected you most in terms of musical maturity?
That's a very interesting question. I feel as a kid, most musicians are very free. That's not only me, many other musicians too. As a kid, you just play and you play Mozart and you move and you play very naturally. And then you start thinking and analyzing things, and that can be blocking. It can blocking the body, can blocking the mind. Because when you grow, you're maybe not so free anymore. And I think the most difficult step as a musician is to, after this analyzing period, to actually go back to being free again.
Again, right.
And to basically take everything you know and know it, but kind of forget it and be free again. And I have to say that this period of my life was Korea.
Okay.
I came to Korea 9 years ago, and I really learned in Korea to be free again. And I think for a musician, Korea is a wonderful place to be, because Korea is very diverse when it comes to musical styles or musical concerts or programs, rather than other countries in Europe, which are very one-sided, and they have one kind of program you can only play, or one kind of style you can only play.
Well, music critics describe the characteristics of your performance as the warmth of tone and paired with dynamic expressiveness. Do you think they are correct, or is there something beyond that?
I think the beautiful thing about music is that it is something very individual. So if you judge someone playing or I judge someone playing, we will have very different opinions and different feelings about it. And even more, it is difficult to judge oneself. But I can say that my goal, if I play, is really the music itself. When I'm on stage and I play, I try just to focus on the music, on myself, on my body, on the moment, and not so much on maybe the more superficial things, like how I move or these kind of things. And so definitely the tone is one of the major parts. I think when I was young, I was more into fast playing. I had a very brilliant technique when I was very young. I practiced so many hours the scales and the technique as a little boy. So I wanted to play fast things and be virtuoso. And I think these days I'm more into not the calm music, but more about the essential of the music. So that's why I recorded the Brahms and the next project, the Telemann. I'm looking really for the content of the music these days. But maybe that changes in 1 year again. I think it's about the stages of life, what you like, what you prefer.
So what's unique is that you wanted to become either a gardener or economist if you didn't become a musician. So what's the connection between this gardener and economist and a flutist?
I have to agree there's not much connection between the gardener and the economist and the musician. The gardener was more when I was young. But I think actually that this is more the way of living, that I can be interested in many things. I think I could imagine many different kind of professions for myself, because I'm a very curious person. Whenever I do something or I get into a certain field, I want to know more about it. And I think that's a little bit the philosophy of life, that if you don't know something about good wine, you will never enjoy good wine, or if you don't know something about coffee, you will never enjoy it. So whatever I do, I want to get into it to enjoy it, so the interest in something. Economics is basically a mathematics study, so it's like learning a language. It's basically like if you learn Chinese and you can talk to Chinese people. And so I really cannot talk about economics, of course, with anyone in my field in music. But it trained me to think. It's a way of thinking. You learn to structure things. So if I have a lot of information, I can structure it and analyze. But for the musical playing, it doesn't help me much, of course. But for the living, it helps me.
Oh, but you were already a successful flutist when you decided to major in economics, right? So it's interesting because you didn't go to music school for that.
Yes, I decided actually when I was very young already that I want to do something else too. I had lessons with Aurel Nicolai when I was a young kid. He was the teacher of all the today famous players. And I talked to him. I told him, I want to study something else. Please help me get into a good school, which he did. And so it was not something spontaneous. It was a long planned thing. I want to do something for my head.
I see.
Because flute playing is not so much head work, really.
So you saw much potential in flute from early age. Tell us about the attractive qualities of flute.
Yes, I think the first flute player I ever heard was the Peter Lukas Graf Mozart recording. And I always just loved the sound of the flute, and the sound of the flute is the highest instrument in the orchestra. It always shines above the orchestra. But the flute also has a very dark character. It doesn't only have the light and fast character. And that's actually what I love more about the flute, even the dark sounds. The
deeper sounds.
Yes,
right.
and the flexibility. And that's why I really wanted my first major CD after a long time to be with pieces which can show this, rather than just the technique, which is quite easy on the flute. It's easy to play fast and play it on a flute.
Well, it's easy for you, but not for any others.
I think compared to other instruments, it's easy. If you compare
really?
with a horn player or other instruments on flute, it's not so difficult to play so fast. But yes, you're right. Of course, it's very individual. It's an individual thing.
And you have a very special flute, which is a very rare, solid gold elbow Cooper, which there's only 8 of them in the world. So could you describe the sound of your flute?
Yes, I was very lucky to get one of these flutes in the 70s. Sir James Galway received the first of these flutes from Albert Cooper in London, and it was actually the first golden flutes ever made, as I believe, and he made 8 of them. And I think that today the flutes are made very often to sound well very quickly without practicing, and these days the flutes were very difficult to play, but they had the chance to just sound absolutely beautiful. But if you give this flute to someone, a flute player, he cannot play well for a couple of days. But if you practice it, it has all the possibilities you can imagine for. And I think it's a little bit a question of money today, of economics. Flute makers want to sell the flutes which are easy playable. So that's why today these flutes are not made anymore. And but for me, this flute really is it offers all the possibility I could wish for: the sound colors, the dark colors, bright colors, and it was really, I was very lucky to be able to get it. Yes. Yeah.
Please share some tips on how everyone could get closer to classical music.
Yes, I think that first of all, classical music is like many things. You have to invest first a little bit something to get something back. So you have to invest some time, some effort, some concentration. And if you learn about classical music, you learn to enjoy it. And I think there's certain classical music directions which are easier to listen to. When I was a kid, I didn't like Brahms. I didn't like Baroque music very much. I liked Shostakovich and the loud pieces. And so I think someone who doesn't like classical music very much should maybe go into pieces or listen to pieces like the Dvorak symphonies or something which is more easy to listen. And then you can slowly move into
Then you can move on to different genres,
other areas,
right?
Yes. Yeah.
I know you're studying modern music as well, and how are those studying is connected to your performance?
Yes, since a very young age, my teachers inspired me to look into folk music or modern music. So I played with folk music from Australia, with native people from Canada, from Eastern Europe. And I think these flute techniques really helped me also in the classical music to be more flexible, because you really learn everything about music and your instrument if you have a broader picture. I can give you one example.
Could you show that?
For example, in Australia, the Aborigines, or in Canada also, when they play the flute, they have a technique which is called circular breathing. And in modern music, flutists use this very often. And it means basically you can blow air for 1 hour. So I can blow the air in the flute for 1 hour without breathing.
Oh, wow.
And so, for example, if I play Bach, I always have to breathe in between because I need air. But if I don't need that anymore, I can do the phrasing like the music needs it and not like I need it. And so, for example, circular breathing would sound like this. Like So I can
circular breathing.
I can just breathe into the flute for the next hour without stopping. And this is something which in native cultures people do since many hundred or thousands of years. But the classical music people don't do that. But of course, with the modern flute today, we can do it because we learn it from these cultures.
You can breathe in and then play at the same time.
Yes, breathing
right?
and playing at the same time. And this is just one example, but there's many things which you learn from these techniques, which you can bring into the classical music, which gives you the ability to really do what you like, rather than being limited.
You have a very special ties with Korea, so we'll talk about your activities in Korea after watching this short video clip.
Okay.
We met with Philipp Jundt, who is enjoying various musical challenges in Korea, which he considers his second home.
Not German. What are you playing today? Luthier? Yeah. Okay.
He's a professor at a Korean branch of the University of Music Franz Liszt Weimar and has been teaching students for 8 years.
I think your sound is very beautiful, but every time you breathe very noisy and high. You do something like this, and I will keep it very calm and low. So open a little bit, relax your throat, and relax your inside of your mouth, and just...
He has tremendous interest in education and he aspires to show the diverse approaches to music to his students.
That was better. And now I think at the end of the study, I really tried to teach the student that they found their own way. For example, how to look at a score. So you find by yourself how to do the dynamics or how to do the interpretation.
When he's teaching, he interacts on a one-on-one basis with the students. We can sense his responsibility as he shows love and passion when he's teaching.
친근하게 다가오셔서 그래서 저희 학생들도 좀 더 친근하게 교수님을 대할 수 있는 것 같아요.
하나하나 기본기부터 차근차근 가르쳐 주셔서 저희가 실력을 쌓았는데 많은 도움이 되고 그걸 통해서 곡에서도 이제 응용을 해서 사용을 하니까 저희가 연주를 하니까 많이 실력 향상이 되는 것 같아요.
Once the lectures end, he's busy holding meetings for the Kangnam Music Festival, which will be held next year. Philipp Jundt has been making new attempts as the music director at the Kangnam Music Festival since 2016.
음악이나 예술 문화를 같이 그 스피릿을 같이 곁들여서 그 장소를 조금 더 풍성하고 아름답고 많은 사람들이 와서 힐링받고 즐길 수 있는 장소로서 만들기 위한 또 하나의 방법으로 이 곤지암 페스티벌이 탄생을 하게 되었습니다.
He's a performer, but he meets and shares opinions with others as a director. He's preparing Innerview to be the messenger, linking the music festival with internationally renowned musicians.
Maybe programs which are more close to the audience, what people in Korea would like to hear. And on the other hand, we also want to really help young musicians to get a chance to play together with famous people or to get a chance to learn from famous people.
So you have a very special relationship with Korea. How did it all begin?
I came to Korea 9 years ago for the first time. At that time, I used to play in orchestras in Germany. And I applied for this professor job at the University of Weimar. And the Weimar University has a whole department here in Korea at the Kangnam University.
Right.
And I thought that I would just come here maybe for half a year or 1 year to have a great experience. But I really loved Korea and I stayed here since 9 years because I think that Korea is just an absolutely fantastic place for classical music to be. And I cannot really imagine going home.
You are teaching students in Kangnam University, as you said.
Yes.
And you apply German teaching method and practices in your studio, right?
Yes, yes.
And what are your opinions about Korean students?
I think on one hand, the young students, maybe in the age range of 12 until 18, have unbelievable abilities here in Korea. I think the education is really fantastically organized and done. But then I think in the university level, where you need a little bit the broader picture, like more the music history and the information about music, I think there's a little bit of lack here in the education system. I think, and that's what I tried to fill in. So, for example, to just know, if you play Mozart concerto, you should know what kind of type was Mozart, how did he write music, what kind of letters did he write, what kind of person does he was. For example, Mozart didn't like to show the true sad emotions very often, so he writes a couple of bars very serious and then he quickly makes a joke. And you can show it with the harmony, you can show it with the structure of the piece, but if you don't know these kind of things, you can just not play Mozart well.
Right.
And I think many people or many students here, they have very good feeling about music and very good abilities, but they don't have so much knowledge about the music history, about the composers.
Background of the
Yes.
music, right?
And I think that is something I really would like to change with the students. I tell them, listen every day to music, read books, give them homework about it. So I think that's one of the major things. If you want to play well, you have to do, I think. Yes.
You are also a music director in Gonjiam Music Festival. Could you tell us about what kind of festival it was?
Yes, about 2 years ago with my colleague Sunyeon Baek, we founded together this music festival. And we have 2 areas. Once we're doing actually it's the biggest flute festival in Korea, once every year. This year we had Sir James Galway and many prestigious guests. And next year in February we will have, I think, 8 of the most famous worldwide flute players and 7 of very fantastic Korean.
Next February?
Yes, next February. 7 of fantastic Korean flute players and over 70 students. And so we have all the flute makers come, so we have a big flute festival for 1 week with an opening concert across the street in Seoul Arts Center. And also we try to invite chamber orchestras and chamber music, and our goal is to make maybe more interesting programs where the audience and the musicians are a little bit closer together and not just have the standard programs. Yes.
But 2017 is just around the corner. What are your plans for next year?
As I said already, I'm going to do 2 CDs in January.
Right.
And actually another CD, which I just recorded 1 month ago with Bach, will come out in April. Then we have the Flute Festival in February.
And you will be also teaching in Switzerland, right?
Yes, I'm
As
also
well?
teaching at the Neuchâtel Conservatoire, where I'm professor since 2 months.
Since 2 months?
Since September.
Since
yes.
September,
Yes.
right.
And yeah, I'm looking forward to this task, yes.
Any other concerts you have planned?
Yes. I think in June there will be the Bavarian Chamber Philharmonic coming, where I play Mozart with them. And end of the year it's the Munich Philharmonic Chamber Orchestra for the Bach concerto coming here, playing with them.
But you will still be in Korea teaching students in Kangnam University, right?
Yes.
Well, looking back, you've been living in Korea for 9 years now, and you said that Korea has helped you to be free as a musician. How is it reflected in your musicality?
Yes, I think there's one really interesting thing about Korea, that since maybe 1 or 2 generations, many musicians go to other countries to study and they come back to Korea. So they go to France, Italy, America. And I think that's why in Korea there's so many different styles of music and the openness of the mind.
More diverse,
Yes,
right?
for different styles. So, and I think as a musician or making music is always the balance between the head, the soul, and the body.
Right.
So the body for how you breathe, how you play your instrument, the soul, the musicality, and the head, what you know about the music. And I think it's our big task to find a balance of these 3 things. And it's very easy that these things get out of balance if you maybe study too much with your head, you are not free anymore, or if you only think about your heart, you move so much.
But not enough techniques.
Yes, and your sound gets very bad.
Right.
And so for me, really, I feel that I found back my balance here in Korea because I was too much head a little bit, I would say, before I came to Korea. And I think this freedom of the styles and also programming more light programs, I really like also to play the really light concert programs. I love Bach and Brahms, but I also love the more popular programs, which I could maybe not do so much in Germany.
Right.
And this really helped me to be free again and to find that balance, I think.
What would you say a few words of wisdom to the young people who are the musicians as yourself, or someone who is challenging themselves too?
Yes. I think that the young flutists or the young musicians should really try not to depend too much on the teachers or on what other people say, or I have to buy a really expensive instrument. I think that nor the teacher, nor the instrument, nor what other people say is so important if you really just listen to yourself and be more independent and figure out things yourself. I think someone like Sir James Galway, he studied the flute very young age, very much alone by just trying. And if he plays the cheapest flute, he sounds exactly the same, like on the most expensive flute. And so I think we shouldn't look too much into other people, what they can give us or the other instrument. Right. We should just try ourselves. What can we do? How can we find our style and learn ourselves? And I think that's probably the best piece of advice I can give to young people, to think about themselves and not about others.
Well, unfortunately, it's time to end our interview. This was a very meaningful interview at the end of the year. Thank you very much for talking with us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here.